What's up, guys? So I'm hanging out in a park here. I wanted to shoot a couple more videos, some talking points and whatnot. So stay tuned. Next couple of weeks I got some videos coming out. So here's an interesting talking point for you. Why we have moved to putting the rappel back up below the belay device rather than above it. So I want to start off with showing the first options, or the first two setups, to show you guys who may not be familiar with one or the other. And then the plan is to talk about pros and cons of each. So let me switch to crotch view and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so crotch view. First, I'm going to show you setting up the backup to the rappel above my device. And so I can start off with the device itself. Just clip that on. So there we go. That would also be rappelling with no backup at all. And then if I want to set up the backup above my device, I'm actually going to extend it out with this single link sling here. Now tie whatever friction hitch you want up above. Okay, so here I have an example of setting up the friction hitch back up above my belay device. So you can see how I have my primary descent here, and I've extended out this friction hitch up here. So really the way how you would, a good way to rappel with this system is to keep this slack and you hold this down while you rappel. If you want the backup to engage, you can rappel onto that and then do whatever you want. Some considerations for dealing with or doing this method is maybe instead of using an auto block, it would be better to use something more like a prusik hitch. Maybe a 2-wrap prusik. Something like that. One reason is it can be easier to mine this thing while you're rappelling down. Another reason is if I rappel onto this hitch, like lower my full body weight onto it, it's a bit stronger than an auto block. And since you are treating this like above your belay device as your full body load, it's nice to have something that's a bit more foolproof. One huge drawback to this method is if you accidentally lower yourself without planning to onto that friction hitch, it is going to be really hard to unload it. So this backup method is really only useful if you're going to be on slabs, because it's easy to pull yourself back up. But if you're in a complete hanging belay, free hanging rappel, it can be hard, very hard, to hoist yourself back up on this method when this thing is fully engaged. You know, you have to basically do a pull-up or get some other material and latch it onto the rope so that way you can stand up and then release this hitch. So this is actually a huge drawback to this method, and that's why I generally stay away from it altogether. So I have a bunch of other videos that talk about this method right here, why I like to rappel with my third hand below my ATC. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the setup or anything. You can just watch those other videos. But it's essentially set up this exact same way, where I will extend my rappel with my ATC and then have some sort of friction hitch below it. Generally, I use an auto block here because it's really easy to release under load and it has the least amount of friction. There's no reason why you can't use a prusik hitch right here. But I would go with what the Canadians do and do a 2-wrap prusik instead of a 3-wrap, just again because it's easier to manage that prusik hitch. Now, in this orientation, this can be considered a hands-free setup because the hollow block or whatever friction hitch you're using is really only there to add just enough friction to stop the rope from sliding through and to orient the brake strands in brake position. If I was going hands-free for any length of time, I could always just take the rope and tie a knot, like so. And now if I do anything or whatever, this thing's just gonna jam up in my friction hitch. I also like this method because it keeps both hands on the brake strand rather than one hand up above not doing anything. When you're rappelling with a heavier backpack or something like that, the extra spacing of the device helps add in more friction just with the bend of the rope here, the more dramatic bend. Also, I can pre-rig several people for rappelling, and I can rappel down first and then they can already have their devices in. It's more comfortable for them to have a extended rappel like that, even if they're not using third hands or anything. Additionally, going back to that same point, if I am on a total free hanging rappel and this thing comes up tight, it's not hard for me to release it and then continue on my way down. Whereas the other method, if I let myself come tight onto that, then it's really hard to fix that issue. Okay, so now I showed you both techniques. Let's talk about them. And this one's not gonna be that long of an argument, because what I say is putting the backup above your rappel device, I just would avoid altogether. I feel like with the new technology, it's really easy just to extend your rappel and have the backup below your device, and it's doing more for you and it's a bit more secure, as well as it doesn't really have the pitfalls of putting the backup above the device. The only time I can really imagine myself putting that backup above the device while rappelling down would maybe be if I know I am going exactly into an ascending situation after that rappel. So if you're in a rock rescue scenario, if your buddy is injured below you and you have to rappel down to them and ascend right back up to the anchor, that could be a time where you put the backup above your rappel device, and then it's super easy to switch into ascending after that. Another example would be crevasse rescue, rappelling down and ascending right back up again. Of course, with how easy it is to switch devices over into guide mode and the other like instruments we carry with us, or just using a gree-gree, that kind of eliminates all those issues. But that is the only thing I could think about putting the backup above the device. Sometimes I've seen people putting the backup above the device for beginners, which I think is completely flawed logic and is actually opening yourself up to even more issues, because it's a lot more common for beginners to lower themselves onto that backup and then they could get stuck there, you know, until you're able to rescue them. So I would say putting the backup above the device is actually a bit more of an advanced technique because of all the pitfalls you have to avoid while in that method. And I definitely would avoid it at all costs if I was in a completely hanging rappel. I'd much rather just lower people down if, you know, rather than have them rappel with that backup above their device. I think ultimately it teaches worse technique too, because you have your left hand on the rope above the ATC instead of both hands below. And it's pretty common for people to just try to grip that left hand when they want to hold themselves, when they have, you know, when that's really not doing anything because their brake hand is holding the brake strand. And if that's completely loose and they're managing to mine that prusik just right, they could sail down without even having any security. Whereas it's a bit more easy to correct that when the device is above and both hands are on the brake strand. I really think it's an antiquated technique. I don't think anyone should be doing it. And I think it's just overall just something that people should stop doing in general, unless they want to employ it for those very specific techniques, which are more in an advanced setting. So I guess it's more of an advanced technique, but at the same time, I'm not going to really do it personally. Hopefully this gets a little argument out there when it's not worth putting the backup above the device anymore. If you feel differently, you can leave a comment about that. I'd like to hear other people's stories if you have one regarding this technique, but ultimately I don't see anything but bad stuff coming from it, and I don't think it's worth doing. Just put your rappel backup below your ATC. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you got something out of this video. I enjoy doing these talking points because I think it's nice to get this information out there to the crowds. It's ultimately just trying to help clean up some systems and try to eliminate some old school methods that don't really hold any water anymore. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. There's Rainier. There's the true summit. Right over there. That's the way down. Skiing up on the Black Diamond Helio Carbon 88s.